clip, we focus on the resources needed to run your business. In doing so, we revisit Modules 1 and 2. In Module 1, we highlighted the importance of the effective and efficient use of physical, human and financial resources, our land, labour and capital. In this clip, we look at the land and labour resources. In the first two clips of Week 2, we looked at what was actually needed to run a horticultural business and ways in which to assess and record our assets. These can include land and our facilities and equipment, including access to irrigation water and our employees. It is worth revisiting Week 2, Clip 1, in terms of assessing property resources. Remember, this includes both the productive capacity of a piece of land and the associated infrastructure, sheds for storage, processing and packaging, as well as the infrastructure associated with irrigation. It is worth having a farm map. This should show paddock boundaries and size, and the associated infrastructure of the holding. It is also useful to have a land use chart. This is equally as useful for the utilisation of space within polytunnel and glasshouse infrastructure. A simple spreadsheet can show the months of the year when each crop will occupy a particular space. In addition to noting the crops to be grown, you can add detail on the associated agronomic practices from site preparation through to harvest. Include separate estimates for successional planting. Once all of the steps and processes have been written down in order, you have the start of an activity analysis. A formal activity analysis allows you to plan the use of the physical resources. The idea here is to fill in the timing when something is likely to occur, followed by the labour and equipment required, along with other inputs, and finally the outputs. For farms with multiple crops, this allows you to understand overlapping time constraints or machinery bottlenecks, slow periods, etc. Availability of labour and water for irrigation may be two of your key limitations that you will have to plan for. Once you have identified an issue, you can make plans. A failure to plan is a plan to fail. In your business plan, you may wish to include a farm map, a land use chart, if you are planning a change, and an activity analysis. You may wish to include a statement about your land and premises. What are the advantages and disadvantages of your location, land, and premises? Are there strengths to be exploited or weaknesses to reduce? Do you have outstanding requirements that need to be overcome? You also need to think about your premises from the point of production facility. What are your future production needs in terms of facilities and equipment? Do you own or outsource? How modern are they? What is the capacity compared with existing and forecast demand? Any investment needed? In a similar vein, you should consider the proximity of suppliers, the availability of labour access to transportation, shipping and receiving, and proximity to market. Let us now revisit the question of your labour resource, an important component of many horticultural businesses. Your labour resource is required to undertake both physical tasks and increasingly more management and supervisory roles. Increases in the use of machinery and associated technology are also important. These changes in workforce requirements requires increasing education, skills and training. There are two main areas to consider. Firstly, planning farm labour requirements and factors affecting labour productivity, and secondly, what is commonly known as human resource management, the process of attracting, developing and maintaining an effective workforce. In terms of planning farm labour requirements, an initial guide is to consider the number of hours work required per annum per area, such as hectare or square metre, for different crops. Given a number of hours per day, e.g. 8-hour days, you can then calculate how many days work across the year is required. Allow for some contingency. Add 15% is a good guide. You will also need to take into account that not all days are work days and that there is annual leave and public holidays. Summing the total hours required for the given area, adding 15% and dividing by the number of available work days will tell you how many labour units you will need to be employed for the year. Labour requirements vary considerably during the year, from season to season, and this is particularly true of crop production. Labour requirements are dependent on the type and size of machinery used. Labour requirements will also vary according to the type of soil. There are two effects here. One is the time taken for the operation and the other is the time available. For some jobs there is little or no difference. For others there is. In some enterprises, the number of staff required will depend on the type, condition and layout of the building, together with the equipment and work methods employed. Finally, there are also variations between the staff themselves, such as their rate of work. See Module 2 for the factors affecting labour productivity. This technique provides an initial guide and should be followed up with more precise methods. A labour profile is a useful technique. This estimates labour requirements for different periods of the year. It should be undertaken for calendar months, fortnightly or weekly. It can be illustrated graphically on a labour profile. It may not be essential to cover the whole year, just peak periods. It is worth focusing on hours required rather than days. In the graphic, there are two suggested minimums. The lower line covers just 3 months of the year, the higher covers 9 months, with casual labour required in November and then again in February and March. It provides a guide to the number of people to employ, the extent of casual labour and/or contractor use required, and also may have implications for number and type of machinery required. The final technique is a gang workday chart. This should be used where teamwork is common. In 20 labour hours, 1 man for 20 hours or 4 men for 5 hours. The gang workday chart recognises that labour and machinery is frequently used in teams. A gang workday chart shows, for specific jobs, the number of men needed and the number of days required. The time required for an operation is shown as a block. Height equates to the number of people, breadth equates to the number of days required to complete the operation. The size of the enterprise and rate of work gives the number of days required for each job. Potatoes on 20 hectares, which could be harvested at a rate of 0.8 hectares a day, assuming an 8-hour day, and say 4 workers, should require 25 days. Our 4 workers are harvesting throughout April and either side given our estimated actual available work days for that month. The gang workday chart is more realistic on labour planning and eases decisions concerning the size and type of machinery. Again, it can be used for planning in peak periods rather than for the whole year. A major difficulty with any method of labour planning is allowing for bad weather, the problem of variation between seasons. It is essentially a matter of judgment, likely to be more than enough time in some years, but not enough in others. Other techniques include a year planner to indicate the likely pattern of work in the months ahead for the long term. In the short term, a job list compiled for each week with the order of priority clearly marked and with deadlines indicated is also useful. This can lead to work schedule outlining who is expected to do what and when. In your business plan, you may be thinking about investigating alternatives for your labour requirements. For example, reducing labour peaks. Options include getting staff to work more overtime, a greater use of casual labour, the use of contractors, mechanisation to reduce the labour requirement, changing the cropping enterprise mix, extending time periods with, for example, the use of early or late varieties, rethinking the employment of regular labour. For example, increasing the regular workforce by 1 staff member has the following possible benefits. It leads to a reduction in overtime, casual labour, and the use of contractors. Has the potential for an improvement in the quality of output, perhaps allowing for changes in the system to give greater profits. Spare labour can act as a contingency allowance for emergencies. The business operator can spend less time on manual work and more time on management or leisure. There may be additional costs in terms of extra wages, a salary, the need for extra machinery, and the demands on a grower's organising ability may be increased. The opposite is replacing some regular labour and machinery with the use of contractors and/or casual labour. Possible benefits include a reduction in the number of people and/or machines, saving basic costs of employment and ownership, overtime and bonus payments, and machinery running costs. This may mean an improvement in the quality of output, a change in the system to give greater profits. There may also be a reduction in capital requirements and associated cost. Additional costs will include the direct cost of employing contractors and/or casual labour, and may include the risk of a contractor not coming exactly when required, risks loss of output, quality, or both. Increased worry and demands on organisational ability and the negative reaction of the workforce to the loss in staff number or available hours to work is also possible. In considering labour alternatives, you may wish to make use of a partial budget. The second area to consider in terms of the labour resource is human resource management. The activities undertaken to attract, develop and maintain an effective workforce within a business. Attracting an effective workforce involves planning, recruiting and selecting. For the horticultural sector, succession planning is also an important area and may be a consideration for your business plan. Once you have a staff in place, you need to think about staff development and performance appraisal. Maybe your business plan includes a proposal to establish or improve a staff development program. Finally, you need to maintain your workforce. The horticultural sector, as with other industries, is a sector that is becoming increasingly globalised. There is a growing need for capable global leaders, people who not only have good leadership abilities, but can also manage across geographical and cultural boundaries. Diversity in the population, the workforce and the marketplace is a fact of life no manager can afford to ignore today. Related to this and other areas is the increasing amount of HR legislation. Remember, within your business plan, it may be worth including a section on the management team and workforce directly involved in implementing the plan. In addition to stating who they are, you may wish to say something about what is involved, their role and how it fits into the organisation, their background, relevant experience and qualifications. Key skills include sales, marketing and financial management, as well as production, operational and market experience. There may also be a role for advisors, consultants, accountants or lawyers. And finally, whatever your business plan entails, it inevitably will involve some change. It is worth revisiting clip 4 from week 4 on change management. Thank you.